Hernando, you have a lot of critics around the world. Anybody that's gotten the degree of recognition that you have certainly does attract critics. And many of these critics really focus in on the fact that they claim that you have only talked about property rights, and in a very narrow sense. Now myself, I feel that, for example, on page 260 of your book, The Mystery of Capital, not that I've memorized it or anything, you have a whole long list of reforms that talk about how property rights have to be embedded in the legal system, about how you have to focus on the legal traditions and the property rights traditions, the way customary law is carried out in the villages of Egypt and any number of other countries. But how do you answer these folks? And in my view, I don't know if you agree, you really are focused much more on the overall question of governance than you are simply on legal titles.
Well, it's interesting you should have made that observation. It's very pleasing to hear you make that observation, because we are a lot more than just property rights. We are about the market system, and we are about the virtues and the principles of democracy and of participation, and the fact that if there's really no opportunity for everybody, it's just not going to work. That's what we're really about. The thing is that regarding property rights, we got pretty specific. And probably that deserved or obtained more publicity than anything else, and somehow or other we're known about that. But the time that you and I met over 20 years ago, when SIPE started supporting us, we were then known as the protectors of the street vendors. So from street vendors to protection of property rights, we've been coming up. Hopefully, in about 5 years or 6, we will be known as something more. The countries that contract us, that is to say, the governments that pay for our services to help them do reforms, do buy them, if you want to, for looking at property rights, for looking at the size of the extra legal sector, for looking at why the rule of law doesn't work, how businesses that combine assets and combine resources should be put into place. They do it for all of that. But I must admit that many times when they call us in initially, they start talking about property rights, and only with time they realize that there's more than that in our coffer.
Hernando, thank you very much for joining us today and helping us launch this new series of economic reform feature service videos. You've talked a lot today about the quality of growth, not just the quantity of growth. I think that might be a good summary for what we've talked about. We have to worry about not just getting those big headline growth numbers of GDP, but we have to worry about how people participate in the process of growth, and the fact that it has to be inclusive. We have to have high quality growth, and we have to have democracy that delivers.
Well, absolutely, because to give anything stability, if you want to give anything sustainability over time, everybody's got to get a part of the cake. Otherwise, they're not going to do it on the basis of even just hope. I mean, people can look forward to things. You know, recently I went to visit in New York something called, and I recommend that anybody does, called the Tenement Museum. It's something I hadn't heard of before, but it's a museum that is basically the old sort of shanty towns of New York, where migrants used to live about 120 years ago, extremely poor. And I remember seeing one, I think it was, I'm trying to think of the name of the people who owned it, the Levines, who lived in a tiny two-room apartment where they had their 2 kids or 3 kids and 3 employees. And you can see when you're in there, walking in there, that it's just like we are here today. But obviously also, from the things they left written behind, they expected that they would be doing better in 2 generations. So as long as you can give hope 2 generations ahead of time, you get there. But the problem for us in Latin America now is that probably half of the people, maybe 40% of the people do have that hope. But while 60 to 50% of them don't, we're in trouble. So hopefully we'll get there soon. Thanks so much for this interview.
Thank you again.